Yo, what is up guys? This is Pedro here, and in today's video, I will be talking about which Washington football team free agents should the Washington football team re-sign, and which ones should they let go. So if you guys are new, make sure to subscribe for Washington and NFL content. We're almost at 5K, so let's get right into the video. So the Washington football team has some really important decisions to make this offseason when it comes to their free agents. So first, let's go through the free agents that the Washington football team has this offseason. So Brandon Scherff, of course, is a free agent. Ryan Kerrigan, Thomas Davis, Dustin Hopkins, Kevin Pierre-Louis, Ronald Darby, Fabian Moreau. You guys can see the rest of the list, some other prominent names: Reuben Foster, Ryan Anderson, Nick Sundberg, Kyle Allen, Cam, and some others. So you guys see we have a bunch of free agents this offseason. So first, we'll start with the guys I think we should absolutely bring back for the right price. And of course, the first guy is Brandon Scherff, who just made the All-Pro team this past season for the Washington football team. One of the best guards in all of football. We drafted him in 2015. He's played for us, of course, for all these years. And the biggest concern with Brandon Scherff is his injury history. 2015, 2016, and 2015, 2016, and 2017, he was pretty healthy, only missing 2 games in those 3 years. But in 2018, he missed half the season. 2019, missed about 5 games. This past year, he had 1 injury, but besides that, he was relatively healthy, only missing 3 games. So the price for Scherff is going to be high. I think it's going to be around, let's say $14.5 million to $16 million per year. Washington, of course, wants to get him back, to a long-term deal. He was one of the offensive captains this year. He's a good guy for the culture, and I think, of course, we should bring him back, especially if we can get him for the right price, and maybe that injury history will, bring that price down just a little bit. But I think it is a good idea to bring back Brandon Scherff, because sure, we have Wes Schweitzer, who's a really good, backup and even can be a solid starter, but besides that, we don't know if Sadiq Charles is going to be a tackle or a guard. So I really think it's important to bring back Brandon Scherff. He was an All-Pro this year for a reason, one of the best guards in all of football. So of course, let's bring back Brandon Scherff. So the next guy on this list is Ronald Darby. Ronald Darby surprised a lot of people this past season. If you look at his stats this season, of course, played in all 16 games, which really was one of the reasons he did not have good years in the last couple of years, was because of his health. Not only did he miss some games in Philly, but he was also, when he was playing hurt this past season, played in all 16 games, started all of them. He had incredible advanced stats. If you look at it, he allowed about a 54% completion percentage this past season, and he was going up against most of the number 1 receivers on teams. The only guy he really struggled against was Amari Cooper. But besides that, he had a pretty good season. A couple other games where he struggled, but I think, had some really good games, especially against the Bengals. Had a really good game this past season. Only allowed 1 touchdown and allowed an 81 pass rating, which is pretty good. And, he's not the best tackler, but not bad. At his best tackling season in a long time, only a 9.8% missed tackling percentage. So I would definitely bring him back. No, he is not a number 1 cornerback in my opinion, or at least not at the moment. Maybe, him getting a full season, another season, an off season in this defensive system, and him staying healthy for another season, maybe he'll turn into a cornerback 1. But at the moment, I think he's a really good second cornerback, him and Kendall Fuller. And I think we should bring him back for the right price. It's probably going to be around $8 to $10 million. It's going to be a little pricey, but I think he had a really good season this year, and I think it's right to bring him back. And yeah, let me know what you guys think about him. And the next guy on this list might be a little bit unpopular, but I think if we can, of course, if someone offers Cam Sims a big deal, then sure, we should not go ahead and re-sign him. But if we can get Cam Sims for cheap, I think he's a good guy for this team, good guy for the culture. Cam Sims made the roster. Actually, he was on the practice squad to start off the season, worked his way up to the game day roster because of his special teams play. And then, about week 5 in that Giants game, he started to get some playing time and ended the season with almost 500 yards and 1 touchdown. And if he would have played the whole season in the role that he finished the season with, he would have probably gotten well over 600 yards. If we can get him for relatively cheap, I think he's a solid rotational receiver. No, he's not a wide receiver 2 or even a wide receiver 3, but he can be a solid option, coming in the rotation and providing some sparks, because his yards after the catch this year was insane. So I would definitely take a look at Cam Sims. And the next guy, Kevin Pierre-Louis, played solid for us this past season in that linebacker position. Played in 13 games, did end off the season, with that ankle injury, which did hurt us in a couple games, but was solid for us. And I think obviously the linebacker position is a little bit weak besides Cole Holcomb, so I would bring back Kevin Pierre-Louis if you can do it, a 2-year deal, relatively cheap. I would much rather have Kevin Pierre-Louis than John Bostic, but that's just my opinion right there. So those are the guys I think we definitely should bring back. So now there's some other guys that are, I think we should consider to bring. Oh, one more guy I forgot, Kyle Allen. I think we should bring him back just because of his contract. He's going to be a restricted free agent, so we can get him for extremely cheap. Actually, he's an exclusive rights free agent, so we can get him for about $800K. That is absolutely nothing, and we could even move on from him. Let's say he's terrible in camp, can move on from him and barely, it's going to affect the cap. So I think also bring back Kyle Allen and Nick Sundberg, who is a free agent. So bring those guys back as well. And now some guys that, depending on the market, we could bring back. Ryan Anderson, still former 2nd round pick. He's had a couple good years. Past season, really didn't have a great year. Really didn't seem to fit in the system, but did still, do some things for us, coming in that rotation, providing some pressure and okay play in the run game. I think personally it's probably time to move on from him, but if you can get him for really cheap, I would be okay to having him back. Same thing with Ryan Kerrigan. Ryan Kerrigan probably is going to be someone that we end up letting go this year, but with a couple of prominent edge rushers hitting the market in J.J. Watt, possibly some other names coming in. Maybe the Broncos are going to move on from Von Miller because of his cap hit. So there's going to be, the market this year for edge rushers is pretty solid. So Ryan Kerrigan might not have much of a market, especially as a starter. And if that's the case, if there's no team willing to give him a starting spot, then I think Washington would make sense for him. But that's not very likely. But that's why I said if the market, if we can get him for cheap, I would definitely bring him back. But I think it is time to move on from Kerrigan, just because he still thinks he's a starter and wants a starting role. And obviously that's not going to happen here with Chase Young and Montez Sweat, but obviously you want him back just because he's been with us his whole career. Another 2 guys that I think we should consider, Reuben Foster and Fabian Moreau. Reuben Foster obviously has a bunch of potential, but had that injury, that nasty ACL injury a couple years ago, and really hasn't fully recovered from that. If you can bring him back for the minimum contract, I would honestly not mind it. Again, linebacker is a weak position, and if he can get back to where he was a few years ago, at Alabama and then San Francisco, that would definitely pay off. I don't think there's going to be a lot of suitors for him just because he hasn't played in a few years and the off the field issues, but that's another guy where I would consider bringing him back. And same thing with Fabian Moreau, bring in some corner depth, and he does exactly that. So if you can get him for a cheap deal, I would do that. And the guys I think we should absolutely move on from, Jeremy Sprinkle. I think that's obvious. Sprinkle has not done well for us at all, and he's a backup tight end this year, and I don't think he should be even on an NFL roster, definitely not ours. So move on from Jeremy Sprinkle, and I think it is time to move on from Dustin Hopkins. I think we should go ahead and get a new kicker. Dustin Hopkins struggled this year, and cost us a few games. So I think it's time to move on from those two guys. And, Ryan Anderson, Ryan Kerrigan, Reuben Foster, Fabian Moreau, definitely possible we move on from those guys. But if we can get them for cheaper and no one overpays for those guys, I think there's a possibility of bringing back some of those guys. So let me know what you guys think about this list, which guys you want to bring back, and how much money you're willing to pay for them. I definitely want to bring back Brandon Scherff, Ronald Darby, Cam Sims, and, Kevin Pierre-Louis, and a couple other guys, because I think they, exceeded expectations this year, especially Cam Sims and Kevin Pierre-Louis and Ronald Darby. So like I said, let me know in the comments down below. Appreciate you guys watching. Subscribe if you guys are new. Turn on those post notifications so you never miss a video, and peace.